All right, we're going to get this started now. Everyone's got some seats. There's a few chairs over here if anyone needs some. I am Lloyd Erickson. I'm the managing editor of Kofford Books, which has published these 2 great volumes. We primarily focus on Mormon studies, scholarly themes. Then Scott comes to us, and we end up doing graphic novels and now books of poetry. So Scott did The Garden of Eden, which was published 10 years ago. It's crazy it's been that long. And then just a few months ago, in late fall, he approached me and said, hey, we saw you're doing some poetry, because we did a reprint of Orson Whitney's Elias. He said, hey, I got a book of poetry. Are you guys interested? I'm like, oh, think about it. And then Kevin emailed me around the same time with another book proposal for poetry. So I thought, okay, we do both together. This is going to be a lot of fun. And we're lucky. Kevin's books just arrived today from the printers. There were some delays with the weather and everything going out to west. So thankfully they showed up just in time. Just give some brief bios. Scott here does a lot of poetry. He does a lot of running. You can follow him on social media. He's always posting about running. But yeah, he's the author of Garden of Eden, his new book, Sacred Scars, as well as several other books of poetry. Kevin is a 6th grade elementary school teacher. How long have you been teaching for?
6th grade, I've been teaching 8 years.
8 years.
Other things longer than that.
And so he's brought us loved ones. He's also done, how many books of book?
A picture book, which was poetic, and another picture book, which wasn't.
Well, that's all I'm going to say. I'll leave it up to the rest of the time to them. They'll take care of the rest. All right. Woo!
All right, thanks for coming. Just want to make sure you all saw the little program here. It gives an outline of what we want to do. For some of you, this may be your first poetry reading, right? It's like, oh my gosh, who are these people, and what do they do? And what facial expressions do I make? What sounds do I make? We've got an outline of the program here. We're going to just take turns reading some poems. As you're reading through the collection, if there are any poems you think, oh gosh, I'd like to hear the author read that, there's a QR code right there, so you can actually request a poem. And then there's us down there. We really want to thank Taste for being here. They've got a table back there. Their chocolate is amazing. Yeah, give them a hand. I've got 2 bars of theirs up here. I will probably be eating it while Scott's reading. Blue Canyon Farm, Aspenwood Manor. These are amazing, as well as their whole collection. And you get 10% off if you buy a book tonight. So consider that. And then also with your little flyer, Pioneer Book is also sponsoring, and they are going to give you buy one get one free at $10 value when you take your little program in. And then on the back, there's some poetry reading etiquette, just so you know how to respond. And if we do a Q&A, if you've been to poetry reading, sometimes it's a little awkward. You get to the Q&A and no one can think of a question, and so the authors are sitting up here kind of thinking, oh, did anyone even understand what I said? And as an audience, I've been there too, you're thinking, oh, think of something, come on, what is a question I can ask them? And so there are several options. Several possibilities there. So, just want to point that out. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and start. This is a poem. It's one of my family's favorites. And this whole collection, there's a lot of poems about them. And I think they made it. Yeah, you can see it in the back there. It's great. This is one that was inspired when we were living in Australia. My wife's from there. We came back to visit. It was in the winter time, and a lot of snow on the ground. The kids were 2 and 1. They were little, and we took them on a drive on New Year's. It was just a really peaceful experience. This is on page 58. It's called Saw. A drive for its own sake. 5 o'clock on New Year's Day. Our kids, aged 2 and 1, coming down from the cocktail of cousins in sugar. Car seat straps sink into puffy coats. Babble and rattling blend with our parental murmurs, with hum of road and engine. Warmth old as the birth of stars, as old as breath melts the crystals of window frost. The glow of afternoon fading into dark, peace as tenuous as a little kid's nap. The world comes unwrapped in a tin box. Nothing here is new. Nothing new is needed. It's unsettling this day and age to feel so complete. The children might remember if the womb was any better, but there's no use asking. As we slow for a stop sign, I turn to see their sleep-closed faces in streetlights that glide over them, quiet as snowflakes. I whisper to my wife. She nods. The silence becomes our silence. With it, we stir this softness like swizzle sticks through hot chocolate froth that will close over in its own gentle time. I'm not going to read the QR code there, but if you want to, the introduction explains that I put a Substack post for every poem in there. If you want a bit more detail, origins and allusions, and a video of me reading it, and pictures and things. For this one, I actually have authentic 2006 footage from our little digital camera. A couple of kids running across the snow and face planting. So it's worth the price of the book just to see that. Here is one that, let's see, I'll read one about my son who is not here right now. He's on a mission in San Antonio. And this is when he turned, I guess it was when he became a deacon. And it's called New Deacon. It's on page 49. This is a villanelle. It's a fun form to write in. Scott has a great villanelle in his book too. New Deacon. It's about a story that didn't actually happen, but it was fun to imagine. It is our son's first trip down the chapel aisle, steering a silver tray of broken bread. Repentant faces lift his way and smile. Our flock, dear villagers who raised this child to bear their burdens, keep their spirits fed, beginning with this trip down the chapel aisle. He follows solemnly the loping file of taller boys, and his too inclined head makes us turn to each other, shrug and smile. This earnestness and shoes that for a while will still be much too big seem to have led to his hopefully only trip down the chapel aisle. With scuff, then cry and clatter, clang and sprawl, the ordinance's dignity has fled. Startled faces crane his way, then smile at us. We nod. What better place to fall than here, where all things rise? Hands rug-burned red, he picks tray bread and self up from the aisle, too sheepish and too shepherded not to smile.
All right, so this is Sacred Scar. I decided I'm going to start off with the dumbest poem in the book. Just so you know, it just gets better from here. So the book is divided into four sections. The first section has poems about Catholic saints. This one is called St. Patrick's Spends His Big Day at My House. So like I said, this is the dumbest one in the book. So St. Patrick spends his big day at my house. His morning begins with Lucky Charms and milk-dyed green with food coloring. But rather than eat only the marshmallows like everyone else, he savors each bite, even after the whole grain shapes get soggy and swell to twice their size. He then dresses in his saintly vestments, making sure to wear his green chasuble so no one pinches him as he stands beside the front door and hands us each our lunches as we leave for school and work. As a guest, he has nowhere else to be but here, so he stretches out on the couch and watches The Quiet Man, Darby O'Gill and the Little People, and half of Lindsay Lohan's Irish Wish. Before television loses its novelty and he steps outside to pick a shamrock bouquet and banish snakes from my yard. glad somebody laughed at that. By the time he's done, my wife and kids are home, so he helps them hang green and yellow streamers above the dinner table, while corned beef simmers in the slow cooker and Irish soda bread bakes in the oven. At 5:30, I arrive in my green Subaru, my pockets full of chocolate doubloons I filched from a pot at the end of the rainbow. And we sit down with St. Patrick at the head of the table, where he invokes the Holy Trinity and blesses our meal. Later, he and I sneak off to the Olive Garden bar, the closest thing we have to a local pub. And he orders a pint of Guinness while I, a Mormon, drink Sprite. And there we sit, two pals on the luckiest day of the year, swapping tales of Irish pirates in 21st century life, as sleepy-eyed suburbanites slurp down bowls of never-ending pasta and listen to the silvery smooth sound of Dean Martin crooning about Amore. That's as dumb as it gets, I hope. The second one is one of my favorites. Sorry, my voice never changed, so I occasionally cracks. This one's called Stigmata. So this poem is where the title of the book comes from, Sacred Scar. And on the cover here is St. Francis of Assisi, who received the stigmata, which are the wounds of Christ, which he bore through the rest of his life. He had the wounds of Christ. This is kind of a poem. It makes me think of the poem that Kevin just read about his kids in a car ride, because this also features my kids in a car ride when they were younger. Stigmata. When I think of the 5 wounds of Christ, I think of you, St. Francis, kneeling in ecstasy on Laverna, your palms open, ready to receive the stigmata from the little seraph on the cross. And I think, too, of the time I swept up trash in Brazil, in my own soft palms, naked against the broom's coarse grain, blistered both and burst, blessing me with my own red set of sores, identical to yours. For a week or so, everyone wanted, like Thomas, to see my hands, to touch the tender, angry marks. Was that how it was for you, day after day, your raw wounds weeping, festering for guests, miracles on display? My wounds eventually went away. Later, when my children were small, we would wave to a wooden statue of you on our way to church. You stood erect, hands out, your arms and shoulders covered in a congregation of birds, as you preached a silent sermon to the wolves in the street. My kids are older now, and we've moved away, but they still talk about you as if you were a favorite uncle or a long-lost friend, a sacred scar of memory slow to mend.
Looks like we need some more chairs in the back. I think there are a couple up here. If you would like to come up, if not, we can get some more. Let's see, I'm going to do one more one about my family, and unfortunately I don't write everything. So I'll read an Easter poem. This one is a Valentine's Day poem. It's called Baggage Declaration. So yeah, some people barely got baggage up me. And so yeah, marriage has been a process of being with someone who has helped me face that, and I guess helped me unpack. So, baggage declaration. When I say I love you, who knows better what I mean than you and St. Valentine himself, 3rd century Roman priest whom Emperor Gaius liked, admired even, but imprisoned for trying to convert him. 61, did I say the page? Okay. Valentine, who healed the jailer's daughter of her blindness, and closed his eyes and cell, head bowed, hands folded, refusing to renounce, awaiting the emperor's roulette of a mind to land on a sentence. Valentine, who knew the peace in such uncertainty, the dread in such love that leads us willingly into the prisons of ourselves, where we choose death over walking free, and rise new creatures, worthier of each other, and this saint whom legend says sank calmly beneath the blunt clubs and was beheaded for good measure. Valentine, who outgrew an empire that bred its power from fear, by feeding his fear to the power I feel when I say I love you. You hear those oohs and ahs, that's great. Sound like this is not your first poetry recital. Awesome. This is called Easter Triptych. A triptych is an art installation, 3 pieces, and so each of these stanzas, they're quatrains, A-B, A-B, they rhyme, and each one presents a little vignette of the Easter story, you could say, starting with Passover, and then kind of Good Friday, and then Resurrection. So, Easter Triptych. The sun sets over doorposts fade. Did I say it was page 21? Okay, sorry. Page 21. The sun sets over doorposts fade to gloom as praise and wailing mingle in one song. Now free to follow God through fire and cloud, we gaze beyond the serpent-sceptered priest, who broke and crushed himself in that dark room and garden, who with bruised heel tread upon the crown, who shouldered exile for the crowd, condemning him in our redemption feast, which finished with sunrise breaking from the tomb, with gnashing teeth and hallelujahs drawn at once from every mouth unwound of shroud. We squint, cold faces lighting from the east.
Okay, I'm going to read one more poem about a saint, and then I'll read a poem about a Latter-day Saint. Thank you. Was that Ashley? Was that? No. Oh, here's my daughter. She's used to it. Okay, this one is called Flight. So this is about Joseph of Cupertino. He was known for levitating. So if you see a picture of him, he's usually like flying up towards a window. Yeah, he apparently can fly. So this one is called Flight, page 16. In paintings, Joseph of Cupertino, the flying friar, the slack-jawed saint, spreads his arms majestically, his hands and fingers like feathers, as he floats above an astonished crowd. Levitating beside a window or a cross, he looks like a basketball player, going in for the dunk on the cover of Sports Illustrated for months. As a boy, he was good for nothing, a dullard prone to fits of anger and ecstasy, no one you would want to see about town or behind the altar at church. And for this, they hid him away. But God loves his underdogs and gives them grace to fly. When I became a priest, someone, I don't know who or why, raised a hand in opposition. And I have carried that ever since, like an old fob on a keychain, scratched and half forgotten, but still there. If I have one regret about that day, it's that I did not spread my arms there at the pulpit and leap above the crowd. To this day, I have no idea who raised a hand against me. I'm looking to find out. Okay. Here's a more serious poem, also about a young person. This one is called Proxies. I wrote this soon after taking my youngest daughter to the temple to do baptisms for the dead. So this is about baptisms for the dead. And it's called Proxies. In your white jumpsuit, you look as small as a rabbit in a pet shop, only more excited than scared. When I see you standing at the edge of the font, unsure what to do with the locker key coiled around your wrist, you look every one of your 11 years, all at once. And innocence sits lightly on your shoulders like the dove that fluttered over Jordan when Jesus himself was baptized. And all I can think is how happy I am that you are happy, that life has not hurt you, that you still have so much of life to live. In the font, you grip my arm while I recite the names of women long dead, ancestors who, like you, felt the innocence of girlhood like a meadow, but who soon felt each stone of mortality like a fracture in the bone. They grew old, fell in love, had happy days and sad, prayed, pleaded with God, and maybe sensed to silence, dreamed and surrendered, lived, survived, and died. And now, as you take upon their names one by one, you take upon their lives. And for a moment, buried together, you become the same in the eyes of God. Sisters of experience and renewal, proxies of future and past.
How many of you are enjoying Scott's poems? Any opposed by the same sign? I'm glad he read that poem, because I really wanted to do that. If he hadn't read the
You've
poem,
been like waiting for weeks.
yes, I would have done that anyway, and then pointed you to the poem, because I absolutely love it. Oh, but you want to know the rest of the story? Fascinating. Oh, still ordained, so it worked. Yeah. I think I'll read one about my daughter who was here, and every dad's got to embarrass his daughter, right? This is when she was a little baby, and she didn't like her. I'll just let the poem tell itself. This is page 57. This is called Fingernails. I reached into the crib on tiptoe, holding my breath from the railing in my ribs, angling the headlamp beam away from her, the headlamp beam from her face so it doesn't make her squirm or look impersonally angelic. She is the messenger of herself, has come in tiny glory to announce she will not keep her hands still when awake. There is the tick of the wall clock, her little breathing, and the click of my clippers. She has come to make mystical and fulfilling as religion these tasks of human housekeeping. In the halo's yellow edge, a frown puckers her face. She stretches, farts, and turns to let me reach her other hand. That one is a true story. And speaking about the temple, I think I'll do one. Every February, there's a Facebook poetry group called Mopo Rimo. And Darlene, who is right over there, Darlene started it like 7 or 8 years ago, maybe? 6, 7 years ago? I teach elementary. And so, but every year and every February, so it's based on NaNoWriMo, right, where you write a novel in a month. So Mopo Rimo, everyone writes as many Mormon poems. You try to write one a day for the month of February. And Scott is great at that. If you have any inklings about, I'd like to kind of write poetry, and who's my tribe, and are there people around who would understand what I want to write, definitely look up that Facebook group or talk to us afterwards. We can point you to it. It's been great. And this poem was one of the ones that I started last February, the February before, and several of these poems in here have come from that avenue. So this is page 47. The Provo Temple, I guess it was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, that it closed down, and it was, I think, the beginning of March, and so we were all kind of talking about that, and the memories that we had of the Provo Temple. And so, okay, 2024, there's the date. Yeah, so it was 2 years ago. And this is, several of us wrote, I guess, elegies or remembrances of the Provo Temple. This was mine. When this world has fulfilled its purpose, run a victory lap around the sun, and spun one final daytime into night, sending the last full moon over mountains like a dove that shall never return before earth rolls up and burns. Before this luminous intelligence is released with a vote of thanks, the gods who grew up here gather for one more walk through its palaces and slums, the seashores and gardens where they harvested memory, noses and toes awash again in the grime and grist of awakening. And even deified, they learn how different this world smells from all the others they're making. Like the moment you stepped inside your house just after the mission, breathed in, and for the first time named the bread and fabric softener scent of home. Walking backwards, holding hands, with tears they believed the eons of divinity would finally give them dominion over, they watched the pulling out of stakes, that grand old firmament collapse in flood and fire, in ashes and then silence. A smudge of dust where once the blue marble hung, the dirt that birthed them, waiting their command.
Okay, this one is called St. Joseph to Sacramento, but it is not about a saint. Those of you who are familiar with history of the American West know that St. Joseph to Sacramento is the route to the Pony Express, and I happen to live along the Pony Express Trail in Eagle Mountain. So that's what it's referring to. This is so Lloyd mentioned that I like to run. This is a running poem. It's also a poem about friendship and bad dates and college and 1980s pop music. If you don't think I can do that, or pull that off. Okay, St. Joseph to Sacramento. Underdressed and overconfident, I plunge into a squally evening, arms pumping rock'em sock'em. And right when I think Almighty God has called it a night, Billy Ocean's Caribbean Queen drops on my playlist, like a spider out for a stroll. And when Ocean sings about painted-on jeans, I remember one time in eastern Idaho, half a lifetime ago, when my roommate and I bought tight thrift store Wranglers and cowboy hats because our dates to the college dance were geek magnets who wanted Marlboro men. Not a cowboy. And all night we line danced and two-stepped our own Texas Nutcracker ballet, while our dates, unamused, eyed the real cowboys in the room, the ones smelling of leather and steel, and wondered what else they had to do to make amends for their youthful sins. And as I remembered those jeans and that night, I realized I'm running on the old Pony Express Trail, and for that fact alone, reject all notions of chance and coincidence. That's when Caribbean Queen ends and the theme of Top Gun Maverick slowly gains in altitude, and I turn a corner, teeth to the icy wind, and soar. Do you want a Civil War poem or a St. George poem?
Yes.
George.
We've talked enough about saints tonight. Let's do the Civil War. Okay, so this is kind of a genealogy poem. And so my mom's side of the family is from Virginia, which means if you go back far enough, you find out that they fought for the Confederacy, which is kind of a heavy heritage to carry sometimes. And so this is kind of about that, and about choices that we make in life, and the consequences they have. And it's called Instant, and there's an epigraph at the beginning from William Faulkner's Intruder in the Dust, where a bunch of guys are sitting around, a bunch of Southerners sitting around talking about the Battle of Gettysburg, and wondering what might have happened if Robert E. Lee hadn't made the bad choice of, well, good choice in retrospect, but if he had not charged the Union center and lost the battle, and many would say lost the war in that instant. So that's what the whole conversation is about in Intruder in the Dust. And what it said is, yesterday won't be over until tomorrow, and tomorrow began 10,000 years ago. So this poem tries to unpack that. It is not yet 2 o'clock, and I want to say, and I should say that my ancestor fought, was part of the Confederate force that stormed the Union Center during Pickett's charge. So that's what's going on here. So it's me talking to him. It is not yet 2 o'clock, and I want to say the instant doesn't matter. You crouched behind a rail fence and a furled rebel flag, waiting for Pickett to signal the advance. In no future does this damned gamble pay off, poor mountain boy, even if you win the day. But Faulkner was right. All is in the balance, and nothing has happened yet. In this instant, somewhere along the federal line, a mini ball with your name on it, wrapped in cheap paper, waits in a cartridge box for some Billy Yank to send your way. And I can tell you what happens. In another instant, you grip your musket and charge across that field, a desperate skeleton blind with hunger, ready to face the enemy with one lead ball and no bayonet. Maybe you reach the wall, maybe you'll only get in range. Either way, that mini ball whistles a hole through your hip. Once upon a time, I wondered what might have happened if that ball had struck you square in the gut, somewhere soft and vital and easy to infect. thus consigning our tomorrows to a slow, festering death, 10,000 years in the making. But I was missing the point of this instant. You are in the balance, not me. It is not yet 2 o'clock on this July afternoon. Nothing has happened, and you can still walk away.
Do we have any
Yes.
requests?
For Kevin, or I will consider that a student of Granger, and for Scott, advice for you.
All right, yeah, that's a good one. All right. It's kind of a long one, so if we go past 7:15. Oliver Granger, that name ring a bell? The doctor knows how it is. And, this is a poem, so I'm sure I can speak for Scott here. We all have different forms of worship and different ways we receive inspiration, and working on poetry is something really, you just sit and you open yourself up to the words and you work with them, and then they don't work, and then they don't work. And some of the poems in here, to get a couple hundred words or fewer, it takes 20 or 30 pages. And this is one that took a bit of work, and I learned something. I guess that's something when you write a poem and you learn something new from it. I like to think that was inspiration and a lot of hard work. The form of this poem comes from, it's page 28, a guy named Christopher Smart, and he was a really quirky poet of the 18th century in England. He would walk around and just grab people and kneel down with them and ask them to pray with him. So a very pious person, but unhinged. And he wrote a poem called "For I Will Consider My Cat Jeffrey." And it's just a long list of all these things he loves about his cat. And so and Oliver Granger, he's this really quirky character in the Doctrine and Covenants. And so I wrote one about him and then learned something. My good friend Janelle was an expert on Sarah Granger, so no surprise. For I will consider thy servant Oliver Granger, for his name thou didst decree through brother Joseph shall be held in sacred remembrance forever. So in his poem, every line starts with "for." For some call this a failed revelation. For if Brigham and the brethren commandoed back to far west under death threats and a springtime moon, laid the temple cornerstone, sang, prayed, and left on missions from exactly then and there because 1 year before Joseph had thus spoken it, then please, dear reader, like and share this poem for the blessed sake of prophecy-fulfilling faith and Oliver Granger. Right? So this is a failed revelation. We can actually make it a true revelation by making him, by spreading his name, his legacy around. Hold his name in sacred remembrance now. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do that in a poem? For at 33, he went mostly blind due to exposure. For in the absence of more detailed primary sources, Google says his corneas might have frozen. For he became a licensed Methodist exhorter and exhorted away in a licensed manner until he met the Mormons and the book. For Moroni appeared to him one night, said kneel, and told him what to pray for. Also mentioned preaching. For Oliver served 2 missions and baptized the Wilsons of later Wilson Lane fame in Ogden, Utah. For Oliver earned no place names himself. The town of Granger, so called for its rich soil, not his good works in redeeming the bad deeds of that best-intentioned Zion. For when Marx and Whitney couldn't quite forsake the Kirtland kingdom, Oliver went commanded back to fall and rise again, failing gloriously in a lost cause, contending for the presidency's debt and property, squinting at paperwork he sanctified with an integrity the Gentile creditors commended. For if anyone has reason to piece out of the church for finances, it was he, sole shoveler after upper for the scant balance of his 47 planetary years. For church history sources in which his name appears are mostly conveyances and affidavits. For over his only plot of land, a tombstone stands weather-worn in Kirtland since 1841. For it reads Oliver Grange, a tiny R wedged in at the end, some stone carver's short-sighted work. That's true. For Lord, thou and Oliver still laugh about it, when you see each other in paradise, still invite all litigants of defaulted oracles to open culture-blinded eyes. Oliver's name indeed lives on in sacred remembrance through his daughter, Sarah Granger Kimball, boss lady of this dispensation, woman's rights woman, that's a quote from her, speaker, listener, leader in the cause for Zion, herself a cause of Zion. Presiding in the visionary present, she built Relief Society in swamp and desert with wisdom, sisterhood, and priestly powerful hands. For her tombstone reads, strong-minded and warm-hearted. For in her and all such consecrated women of song and speech and statue-worthy labors, man cannot hope for any greater honor bestowed in heaven's earthly queen and kingdom than to be called their father.
Okay, this one is called Advice to a Young Mormon Poet. It's advice. 30 young Mormon poets out there, this is for you. And it's like advice. You don't have to take it if you don't want to. This is what I would say if you asked me. But nobody ever asks me, so I just it's in the last section of the book called An Afterthought, which take it forward. Advice to a young Mormon poet. Just know you are not the first to take up your pen. Our people crossed oceans and prairies and wrote poems along the way. Read their letters and diaries. You'll find poems scribbled between lines and in margins. And then read everything else, not just the poems. We have lost traditions. Find them, respond, redact, restore, do your homework. Recover what we've forgotten as a rose blossoming in the desert. But don't get mired in the past. Treat it like a storehouse stocked with 2 centuries of consecrated goods. James Kofford is here. He knows what I'm talking about. Where was I? Consecrated goods. Engage the present. Imagine futures. If you spot Zion in the sky, put it in your pocket for another day. We have enough prophets and priests. We even have plenty of poets, so nothing you say will be entirely new. It all comes down to how you say it. Don't echo the echo chamber. Take up your divining rod. Douse with Oliver for something hidden and true. Gaze with Eliza at the glittering expanse. Follow her into the wilderness. And yes, though it sounds trite, go to church. Read your scriptures. Pray. 10 minutes for questions?
Yeah, about 10
There's
minutes.
a lot of people here, which
Yes.
got a lot of books to sign.
That's very nice. Yeah, any questions?
I've got a question for both of you. Aside from what's obviously in your poem, what advice would you give to a young Mormon poet?
That's true. Read Scott's poem, Advice to a Young Mormon Poet. Start there. And yeah, find the people. You know, I mentioned the Facebook group. And just, there's so many ways to be involved. And before you're a good writer, you're a good reader. And a good reader means, obviously, there's always the advice to read a lot, read widely. But I'm talking about participatory reading, where you go and on the Facebook group and you read other people's work and you comment and you support. And so the best leaders are the best followers, or they start as the best followers. So just become part of the people that you want to write with and write like. So.
First, get like a well-paying job.
It's in it. What poem is that? He has a poem in there. Which ends
I do, yeah. There is actually a poem about no, I think the advice that I would give is like give yourself grace to be, it's okay to like struggle at first. I mean, nobody like comes into the world a perfect poet, knowing how to write well. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of practice, you have to write a lot, you have to fail a lot. It can be a frustrating and sometimes humiliating or embarrassing process. But just keep at it. And the talent will come, the words will come, the poems will come. So don't give up, be kind to yourself.
Could you tell us about, like, the start of a poem, like the inspiration for your poems? They probably come in diverse ways, but what are those for you? Like, do you jot down ideas when you're on a run, or where do they come? And how does that work with inspiration?
Yeah, go for it.
I think just, they do happen while running sometimes. Sometimes you're just kind of out there running and it's really long. You got nothing else to do, so you just start writing poems in your head and you get home. But a lot of times, I don't know that there's one right way to start. I mean, for me, a lot of times it's just kind of putting some words down and trying them out. And sometimes they take and sometimes they don't. My notebooks are full of like unfinished poems that never quite get there. But a lot of it is just kind of looking around and training your brain to recognize poems in the world. And that's something what I think is really nice about the MoCo Rimo that we do, which is this month actually, is that after a few days of doing this every day, you begin to kind of rewire your brain into looking out for poems. And you never know when they're going to happen. So for example, yesterday, what was the one I wrote yesterday called? It was like snacking. I watched the Winter Olympics snacking or something like that. So it's a poem about watching, these like gods on earth do these amazing things on skis and blades, and then you're just here eating popcorn. It's an interesting juxtaposition, and that's a poem that can be.
It's finding juxtapositions, I guess looking at things that you see a certain way and then trying to find a different angle to it. Questioning it or challenging it or reversing it. That's how I think a lot of ideas come. Because it's a line of words that sound nice, they're not going to say much until you work at them into, I guess, finding whether it's following the poem to where it leads. That's pretty abstract.
But I might add too, just a lot of poems happen in revision. So it's not kind of like in the movies where it's just kind of like inspiration hits and you're like sitting on the floor scribbling on the ground a poem or something like that. That's not how it happens. A lot of time you're writing it on your phone and then you come back and you're like, wow, this is crap. And then you rewrite it and you're like, okay, that's getting better. And then it's kind of a process of revision, and a lot of times that's where it happens. That's where the magic happens. In that revision stage.
Yeah. Robert Frost said, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. So yeah, if you're not surprised by something you write, then you probably say something that a lot of other people can say. More? All right. Yes?
So do you try different styles of poetry? Not just your like where you really did a jive. Do you go out and like do cowboy poetry, or do you do strict rhyme poetry, or do you do things like that?
That can be a very good way to jog your typical way of expressing something. Someone said that a cliche is the first way you think of explaining something or saying something, and form will make you try to say things differently. And I think a third of the poems I have are rhyming kind of metrical poems in my collection, and sometimes that happens. And that's something I kind of like to do a bit more, is actually work in different forms. I know someone who does that really well, this guy right here. He's great at that. He's just experimenting with different forms and seeing what happens through that. So, it's something I want to actually do more, so thanks for the reminder.
And I was recently gifted a book of cowboy poetry, so I haven't. The only cowboy poem I have is the one that you heard tonight. Not much of a cowboy poem, but I have a lot of fun working with form. I have a few. I think I just have actually one poem in form where I have a rhyme scheme and a set rhythm. A lot of this is free verse, but I've got another book that was kind of just me experimenting with different kind of forms throughout time. So you've got like sonnets in there, and a lot of it's in like what we call ballad stanza, or I don't know. But yeah.
Cool. probably one more, and then, we do need to be out of here at 8 o'clock. That's when they shut the doors, so. And you do have to put away your chairs, so.
This is probably not a great question, but I'd love to hear your 2 cents on, we're in a new era of content creation with AI. And what do you feel like your roles as writers, as creators in this new era? Like, are you just gonna roll on? Are you concerned? Are you curious? Like, I'd just love to hear your thoughts.
I started last, or did you start last time?
I don't remember. You got some?
Well, I mean, I think AI is really interesting. I don't have anything super profound to say about it. I mean, a lot of times, just to amuse myself, sometimes I will ask ChatGPT, that's it, right? To write a poem about a certain topic and see what happens. It's usually pretty bad stuff, but I'm also at the same time pretty amazed by what it's capable of doing. Like, it's cranking out what I would say is like a decent high school poem, right? Which is scary when you think about what it could do now in 10 years and what that means for people like us. But I had a really interesting thing happen the other day. So part of NaNoWriMo, I wrote this poem called Walt Whitman as Jesus During the War, which is a poem that kind of compares Walt Whitman as a Civil War nurse to Jesus. And so I just, out of the blue, asked ChatGPT to write a poem called, this was after I wrote mine, to write a poem called Walt Whitman as Jesus During the War. And it came back with this terrible poem, but I wish I had had this handy. But this is what one of the lines really struck me, and because it came back this. One of the lines that it shot back at me was, "I show him the wound and call it America." And I was like, dang, Chat, that was good. So I used that line as kind of a prompt for what I thought was a pretty decent poem. So, interesting.
Yeah, I've actually tried, there's a critique GPT that someone created, a poetry critique GPT, and I put one of the poems in the collection through it, and they were good suggestions. I mean, grounded in people and someone who had experience reading poetry. I didn't take them, but I can see how that could be useful. It's been very helpful as I've done these Substack posts to create images. I could not find an Easter triptych. I just told it, hey, here's the poem, and it came up with a nice Easter triptych. It's, yeah.
And you'll notice there's like a really nice portrait of me on the back.
That's just what I was going to say.
It's an AI, yeah.
I wanted a picture of, okay, what does a reading look like? And I just said, show people that are reading and put this guy's face on it. So yeah, that's Scott. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, you hear us. Anyway, yeah, we really appreciate
Thank you for
being here.
coming tonight, yeah.
Yeah, we'll be just here